Welcome to another episode of Weekend Tech. In this episode, let's take a look at one of the projects that I had worked on a couple of months back. This is a configuration system for ASP.NET Core and in .NET Core as well. And it helps you write type-safe configuration for your API and console projects. So for example, if you're writing a web API and you have a configuration that describes it describes your API, mainly name, version, and its description. You could define that shape in a class and then validate that config through data annotations. For example, you could make sure that all of these values at runtime are indeed not nulls or empty strings. So you could validate them with the required attribute and the min length attribute, for example. And once you inject these values through the configuration system on the ASP.NET Core, you can inject the configuration system, the config service in your controllers. So for example, let's say this is my portfolio. In the blog section, I'm using an ASP.NET Core web API to serve these blogs. So let's take a look at that code and see how I've used this config service. So this is the project. There's the web API project, class library for some services, and some XUnit tests. So for example, let's look at this about config. It has three properties, as we saw, a little bit different. First is the app name, the version we are at, and a contact email for this app. So currently this is being fetched in the app controller, and the way we've done it is I've configured the app about config through the configuration system, which is getting the blog section of the configuration, and I've also added a singleton which gets the config service, and this is an extension method from the config service that I've written, and you can also install this with NuGet. So once these two are done in our controller, all we have to do is inject that config service of that specified T of config. In this case, it's app about config that has those three properties. And once you have that, all you need to do is do get config async, and this will be of type T that you have specified. So for example, if I go to the root of the project, get slash, you see I'm getting a couple of properties that I've specified there. For example, app name and version. And since I've not specified that the contact email should be null or required, the app is working fine. And if I bring up, it's running through Docker, so it's showing that it's healthy currently. But if I, in my config, if I don't specify the contact email, but in my config class specify that this email is required, we'll wait for the app to restart, and now you can see that it's unhealthy, and that's the reason that's happening is because I've written a health check on the Docker file that whenever the container starts, it hits the slash API and then tries to fetch that health check API. And because I'm validating the configuration as and when it's being injected through the controller, it catches that validation is failing, and that's why the app shows it's unhealthy. So now let's take it up a notch. Let's supply the contact email, and for now let's just give it some random email, which is not actually a proper email, isn't right? So let's see what happens. We'll wait for the container to restart. So now it still shows that it's healthy, and if we restart this, we're getting this random email, but the thing is not actually an email. So since the component model has validations for email address as well, what we can also do is pass something like this, if I can spell it correctly. So we've added that this contact email should also be a proper email address, and now again this has become unhealthy. So again, if we change the email to, let's say, my email, and now wait for that container to restart, see, it's now back to healthy. And if we refresh this, you see you get the proper config. And the idea behind this project was that even though ASP.NET allows you to configure your options very nicely, there's no sort of way to validate them as easily. And that was one of the main reasons why I came up with this project. Currently, this is mainly written in a way that it complements the notions of ASP.NET Core, but I'm also looking into how this could be used in regular console projects, because they also require some sort of configuration that is passed when the executable of it is run. So again, PRs are welcome on this, and I'll be updating this regularly on NuGet, and also I'm obviously using this in my own portfolio, which is southsouth.github.io. So yeah, feel free to give it a PR, star it if you like it. And yeah, that was another installment of Weekend Tech. Have a nice week.